OBS is some nonsense sometimes. Really and truly it is. Like, anyway, I think we're back. Yeah, I think we're back now. Sorry about that. After samsho closed, OBS kind of just went like mega abrupt and then shut off. Lol, lamau. Anyway. So, the line of thought that I was having before all this happened, let me think very carefully about what I was saying before. Right. So, the thing that I was saying in particular is that with Mark of the Wolves, in particular, that was the last Fatal Fury game that we had before the series basically went on break. Largely because what happened shortly after that game came out is that around that time, the original incarnation of SNK was kind of going through it, and so they basically, in no uncertain terms, they basically kind of they didn't close in the sense that that they completely dissolved, but like a lot of what we would call kind of like the old SNK kind of disappeared around like 2001-ish and became SNK Playmore. And Mark of the Wolves was out like maybe like a year or so before that. And so in sort of, I'd say like maybe like a year or so before that, or like right before old SNK transitioned over into like Eolith and SNK Playmore, or Eolith rather. If I remember the history right. So basically, right, Fatal Fury with Mark of the Wolves at around that time, what wound up happening is rather than having like the lane system of the other Fatal Fury games, right? Where it's like, okay, you can step into the background or step into the foreground or what have you, or step into the like normal line or what have you. Mark of the Wolves chose to take a slightly different tack on it, where it's like, hey, so, and this is important to kind of bring up because the feel of that game is very different from, yeah, the tech had a shenanigans moment, but we fixed it. We fixed it, relatively speaking. So it's one of those things where yeah, it's one of those things where here's what I was thinking. So right, Dream Birth, we fixed that. Train of thought is re-landing in the station. Right. So Fatal Fury, right? After it sort of abandoned the idea of using the lane system, what it did instead was they sort of set it up so that it became around two major things with Mark of the Wolves. Something called the tactical offense position, which is basically like, hey, there's a segment of your life bar that you can choose, right? And while you are in that segment of your life bar, your attacks do more damage. You also have access to a very powerful attack called your top attack, which can hit relatively hard and kind of like shake people out and things like that. And you also have, independent of whether or not you're in your favorite section of your life bar, independent of that, you also have the ability to like cancel or to feint certain moves, certain special moves, by like breaking them midway through for combo opportunities, right? So for example, the character that I liked to use in Mark of the Wolves, Hotaru, she had a move where she would do a kick that would launch you, right? But if you did a break on the kick launch, it would allow her to you float up into the air and she gets another combo afterward. very short one, but she can, right? As well as being able to like feint or fake doing certain special moves. So like the whole thing that Mark of the Wolves wound up leaning toward then was this style of gameplay where it's like, okay, off of single hits into special moves, you can do lots of conversions with things like that if you know how to do breaks. And a couple of other things that were really more emphasis on like, you can still combo in those games, but it's not like KOF style, and it's not Street Fighter style either. It's very different. So I was saying all of that just to sort of say that it's going to be very interesting to sort of see good. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like this is what Charlotte is like really good at, right? Like this is the thing that she's like really good at, right? Baiting people to jump so that she can like do other defensive options that can like make them suffer for it, right? Like, so yeah, Charlotte is very good at like walling and poking, right? Because if she has enough of a life lead and is comfortable with what she's pressing and what she's doing, she doesn't have to engage if she doesn't really want to in the way that you would think. Ah, damn! I ran out of rage right at the time. Ah, fuck! Oh, yeah, that's fair. God first. Gotcha. No! No, it didn't combo. Fuck. That did, though. That was scary. That was really scary. I almost died there. Okay, but she's got rage now, and hers lasts like a while. Ah, God. Okay, good. There we go. Okay, I'm really happy. Because, like, it looks like after crashing, I somehow managed to make this more stable. Or I just did a better job filtering what matches I'm getting. Fair. Fair. He's up the combo. Yes! So yeah, like, again, I know I'm saying this a lot, but it's important because I want people to understand this about Samurai Showdown. Samurai Showdown is not a slow game, it's a tense game. Ooh. Fair. It'll hurt, but not really that much because they definitely went for the they went for the Rage Explosion definitely a bit too early because it's one of those things where, again, right, like your Rage Explosion will do more damage if you have every time I say that it's just important to emphasize because people definitely get the wrong idea about this game. Yeah, so Charlotte, right? Like the main thing, again, she specializes really well in poking. Basically, if you get particularly good at calling out the way that her pokes work, you can inflate. Like, you can do that shit that I just did, right? And now my main objective is to try to keep her from getting back to her weapon. So that's the main thing about Charlotte, is that if you're not careful about how you're poking, and you're just like putting out Charlotte's like 5B and 2B and things like that, right? If you're just putting those out carelessly, and you're fighting against somebody that is willing to call it out with a deflect, it's like, well, and again, like she has moves that you can use that you can't deflect, but like. Oops, I fucked up. Ah, shit. Yep. No weapon for you. Whew. I love my feral fire child boy. Look at him. Isn't he's such a good boy, isn't he? And I jump right into Tri-Slash. So yeah, that's the thing. Why do you keep doing that? Oh. That's not what I wanted to do. Free. So yeah, right? Like the main thing about Samurai Showdown is that, especially when you're first trying to play it, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not allowed to make any mistakes, and that sucks. But that's also kind of the point of Samurai Showdown. It's a very deliberate part of the design space for this game that you're kind of just living on the edge like that, where it's like, okay, wow, actually, if I mess up, I don't get bailed out. Like, if I screw this up, I'm immensely in the toilet, right? But that's the fun part, and that's the deliberate part. If you are the kind of person that enjoys those kinds of stakes, right? And the nice thing, right, is that Samurai Showdown does reward having a good understanding of, like, basics, right? If you have solid fundamentals in terms of, like, okay, I'm comfortable with footsies, I'm comfortable with, like, being patient, defending, and things like that, right? Then, like, you can play Samurai Showdown and have a good time, right? The main things that you, like, a lot of what you're practicing in samsho, there are certain things, obviously, that are, like, very deep technical things that you are going to have to, like, get used to 100%. Like, I'm not saying that this is a game without technical depth, because it has technical depth in it, but it's less about dexterity checks and more about what are the things that you know how to do as relates to what your character's game plan is and how you want to execute that, right? Yeah, people who are like, I don't really like fighting games that have like a bunch of combos and things like that. I don't like that. Try Samurai Showdown. Yeah, OBS. What happened is that Samurai Showdown closed first because it's still the rollback open beta is doing better today than it was yesterday, but it's still a little rough. Right after it closed, OBS exploded for basically no reason. My day is better now that I'm streaming. This week in general has kind of just been a trial at work. Without getting into too many details, today was kind of no exception. But honestly, like, now I'm doing better because I'm here. We're just chilling. Yeah, how about you, Kettle? Hopefully your day has been going well, successful, and or productive, whichever you needed. Stole my Hibiki color. Don't do that. You don't want to jump like that with Hibiki against me. If I'm paying attention, I'll literally just see you right out of the sky. You don't want that. Ooh, I got hit by the run-up. Grab and disarm. That's not good. Where is it gonna land? Right in front of me? Okay. Gotcha. WFT, why does my weapon flip always crash it? Ah, every time. every time I get almost every other time I get a throw combo, it makes it stop. I'm sad. That would have been a kill. That would have been a kill. That would have been a kill. Because I caught the... You saw that they started to roll, right? I saw them roll. I caught it with a throw. And then did a combo. And it basically would have been night-night. Right there. But, roll back. Or at least roll back beta. They're working on it. But they did say, when they put this one out, it's like, listen, we're going to be real with y'all. It's going to be really rough for this first time. We are... Okay, so for clarity's sake, it is less that the game... The simplest way to put it, this is literally an open beta for the rollback that they're newly implementing into this game. It didn't have it at all. And basically, SNK hired a third-party team to integrate rollback net play into it. Put it very simply, if you are trying to add rollback net play to a game that did not have it before, the level of challenge that usually implies, depending on the complexity of the game, is anywhere between, this is kind of a pain in the ass, but it's doable, to, Jesus fuck, how much of this game are we going to have to rework from the bottom up, right? So, it's like... It's kind of buggy, but not in the way that, like, oh, this game is always like this, but more like they're literally trying to, like, test bed out. They're trying to test bed out a new implementation of a new feature, and this game was not initially designed with that feature in mind. So it's one of those things where, yes, it is, but not in the way that you would think, where it's like, wow, they released this. I'm gonna put it like this. This game is, but not in the way that a lot of people get really shitty about, like, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet being buggy, right? It's not like that. It's more along the lines of, like, they're trying to implement a new thing, and they're doing their best, but it's a little hard. So it's gonna take a little time for it to, like, actually settle correctly. This may be a new question, but what do you mean by... No. It is literally the style of net play that is used to connect two players. It is not the same as remastering. Rollback style net play functionally makes it so that when two people are playing a fighting game together, for example, right? The short answer is that basically the game is attempting to track and to some degree predict what inputs you're putting in or what state you're going to be in, and if it doesn't match, it will roll it back to the last frame where you two were matching. This is better than delay-based inputs for fighting. That's hard. Let me properly explain after this match is over. I have to try not to die. But no, it's not. The short answer is that it's not at all like remastering at all. Very different thing. Yeah, it's a networking thing. I got hit by that. Or I didn't, because they fucked it up. Yeah, it's a networking thing. So basically the simplest way to describe it is that with delay-based networking, right? With delay-based networking, if there is a desynchronization between the two players in delay-based networking, what will happen usually is that the inputs of one player will be literally delayed until it can catch up, right? Oh, they know how to use recoil cancels. Okay. Yeah, this is dangerous. They know how to use recoil cancels. So normally, right, if you're doing just delay-based networking for fighting games, if there's a desynchronization between you and the other opponent, or you're not matching up, what will happen is that one or both of you will have like your specific things. Like basically, one or both of you will have. Oh right, that continues on. That continues on block. I forgot about that. I used to know that because I'm a Darley player. I should know that. Where the? Is my weapon gone? Is my weapon straight up just gone? Oh wow, my weapon was just straight up gone. Anyway, so with rollback net play, right? The main difference is that unlike delay, where it's like, okay, while we catch up, right, people's inputs will be like super delayed. With rollback, what happens is that if you and the other player ever fall out of sync with each other, it will go back to the last point that you were synchronized and re-simulate the game state from there. I have a video on it that I can drop here in a second. Or actually, Sin, are you still here? I need a favor if you are. Okay, it's not blockable, and I knew that. Ah, jeez. I messed it up. Damn, I messed up that punish, but that was good. They got me. That's fair. Ah! Right, that crosses up past a certain point, doesn't it? Fair. That wasn't my turn. I'm dead. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I died. Hang on, let me go see if I can find it. Wow, this is... if I can go find that video. Because I was hoping Sin was here so I could ask them to go do it. So, yeah. Whoops. Okay, at least this time I didn't close it. But yeah, Kettle, if you want basically a much better explanation of the difference between delay, networking versus rollback, watch that video. It's not like super long, it's relatively short. It explains it a lot better than I could from a technical standpoint, and pretty much has all the relevant information you need. Ooh. I get hit. Okay. Gotta be careful, because... Okay. Age is done. Alright, I'm good. Sheesh! Okay. So, I'm loaded up on meatballs, which is good. Gotta... see if they make any really foolish mistakes. Ah, it's good. Oops. Yikes. Yeah. Too much power. So, yeah, basically the reason why... So I can explain this other part from a technical aspect now that I froze this thing. So, the reason why it's so difficult... Yeah. And I was confused for the longest time when you talked about rollback, but thought it was a mastering thing and didn't question it. Yeah, it's not. I can see why you would think so, but it's definitely not. But yeah, the main reason why it's so difficult to put rollback into games that didn't have it, it's easier to a certain degree with older games, but only to a degree. Here's the reason why. So, in order for... And rollback is not just like a fighting game thing, right? You can do rollback-based net play for any kind of network game if you really want to, right? But here's the reason why, depending on the situation, you may not need it, or why sometimes it's really hard to implement into games that didn't have it before. In order for rollback to work correctly, you have to basically have the ability to step back some arbitrary number of frames in the match history with relative ease, right? And get the same results every time. In other words, your game has to play out deterministically. To phrase that another way, right? If your game, like if, for example, let's put it like this, right? If I were to record just the inputs from both players, right? From a particular match, right? And then I made those, and then I somehow replayed those inputs in like training mode. If I get the exact same results from just the player's inputs every single time, then that game is sufficiently deterministic for rollback to be plausible, right? Because the idea is that with rollback in particular, if the two players that are playing, or what have you, if they have a thing where the synchronization between them is off, you need to be able to step back for both players back to a point where they were in sync and then re-simulate it going forward from there. So if you're not able to literally, if your game, right, in whatever match state that it's in or otherwise, if your game is not set up such that you could be like, yeah, all I would really need in order to like do a proper, like to store replays of a game or whatever, if I could just store all the inputs that all the players did and play them back in like training mode and it gives me the same match every time, that is sufficiently deterministic, because it means that if you had to, you could step back 2 frames or 3 frames or 5 frames and re-simulate it if things didn't match up, right? So for games that are not designed deterministically like that, and trying to do rollback net play can be very, very difficult. Ah, shit, I got disarmed. Isn't that most fighting games that they... No. So, that's the thing, right? I'm trying to think of like the best way to describe it. Because I get what you mean, but... When I say deterministic, I'm specifically talking about explicitly in terms of, that's why I said it's about the inputs that you put in, right? Like if I were to literally, like, I messed up. I already had the maximum amount of fireball charges that I couldn't get. Be dead. So the main thing that I was getting at when I was saying deterministic before is that it's like literally, if I'm recording, when I say only the inputs, I literally mean that. With most fighting, like, here's an example, right? Like, y'all have seen me sometimes, like, take... Dang. Yeah, it's fine, I'm dead. So, Kettle, when I'm saying deterministic, what I mean in this sense is that I sort of see where you're going with that, why you're like, yeah, aren't most fighting games not deterministic? I'm talking about it from the sense of literally, if I were to take all the inputs, just buttons-wise, right? I'm talking about deterministic in the sense of, can I take only the inputs from both players, put them into like a recording, playback in training mode, and have it do exactly the same thing? Yes or no? And with most fighting games, if you actually set them up correctly, the answer is yes, right? Like, I'm talking about determinism in the sense of like, so it's solely an input thing and taking into account. Kind of. Okay. Here's basically the best way that I can think of to try to summarize this, right? If we talk about determinism in fighting games, the general idea is that it's because the guess people's moves part, I'm going to put it like this, right? In a fighting game, when you do for a character, right, like a special move, you know that for a certain number of frames, you're going to be potentially doing that move, right? I'm trying to, let me wind this backwards. Yeah, when we're talking about input determinism, when we talk about input determinism, it's, or let me wind that back again. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. When we talk about determinism in fighting games, what we mean primarily is if you were able to take an arbitrary set of inputs from any given match and have the game play them back, would you get exactly the same results as when that match was played? If yes, then your fighting game has been set up in such a way that it is deterministic, right? Where you usually run into issues with this is with characters, for example, like Faust, right? Where, in Guilty Gear I'm talking about, where Faust, for example, can throw out random items and things like that. Usually, as an example, if you're going to account for whatever random items Faust throws out, there is a certain way that your random number generator needs to be set up so that you can keep in mind, okay, for this match, this is what the random number generator was set to. So whenever Faust does moves that throw out these things, we can re-roll the results of that and do that. But putting aside things like that, the general idea behind determinism in fighting games is, can you reproduce the same game state from a given set of recorded inputs every single time? There's no necessarily guessing of people's moves, because it's the thing where it's like, okay, if you did a command that's quarter circle forward and light slash with Kazuki, you get this, right? So the main things that are being recorded as far as fighting games that are being set up for rollback will be the inputs, as well as any specific, like, character-specific state things that were happening at that time. And then basically everything else kind of, like, goes forward from there. It's a really weird and complicated thing to kind of explain, mostly because I have never worked with rollback in a significant enough capacity. But functionally speaking, when we're talking about determinism in fighting games, The simplest way that I can try to put it, and hopefully this makes sense, and if it doesn't, just literally watch the video and it will more or less explain to you the salient parts of what you need to know about making a fighting game deterministic. But basically speaking, the idea when a fighting game is... When we talk about deterministic, here's a good metaphor. Here's a good metaphor that I think might help clear this out. And if it doesn't make sense afterward, Kettle, you can tell me, and that's on me. So, here's a good example, right? Chess is, for example, a very easy game to like handle deterministically because, right, when the piece move, like you say, okay, this piece moves here, this piece moves here, right? You have a way of like replaying step by step what each of those moves are, right? So if the computer has to undo a couple of things in a chess match, right, it's just a matter of going back in the log and going, okay, at this point, this is where these pieces were, this is where these pieces were, okay, do that, right? That's chess. For a fighting game, if you're doing it deterministically, it's like, okay, at this point in the match, these were the inputs that were happening, this is the position where the players were at, roll back to that point. So it's not about guessing where the moves are at, it's about recording what was each player doing at that point in time. And to a certain degree, you do have the ability, when you're talking about rollback, specifically on the networking side, there is a certain ability to predict how these things work, but that's better explained in the video. Does that kind of sort of make sense when I'm talking about how to make a fighting game deterministic? It's completely okay if the answer is like no. Yeah. Yeah, like, the technical details are kind of a pain in the ass as far as like implementation in a game, but the video will give you the salient parts of it as relates to networking. Almost killed, but not quite. And not every kind of, so I'll put it like this. Rollback is especially useful for fighting games, but not every network game needs rollback. Many of them probably would benefit from it, but they don't all need it. Like for games, like the reason why it works so well for fighting games in particular is that with fighting games, right, you have a lot of actions that are very much like very frame specific and things like that. So it's very important that it's one of those things where what I'm looking for. It's one of those things where it's really just dependent on what kind of game you're making, right? Like, technically speaking, for example, like Final Fantasy XIV doesn't need rollback net play necessarily. If you're not doing things where there's a lot of like exacting precision in what you are doing, or where the individual like moment to moment stuff isn't as impactful, right? You don't need rollback net play. For example, right, like most RTS games like StarCraft, you don't really need rollback in that. It's not necessary for all online play, but it is very well suited to certain types of games. is the simplest way to put it. So the reason why, for example, rollback is well suited to fighting games is because, yeah, mostly PvP stuff. The reason why, or anything where it's like PvP or things where it's like you need to have a really fine degree of control over your character. And like the video will kind of give you a reference point for this. The word is gonna come to me eventually. That's fair. Gotcha. Charmed. Oh, dang. He died. That's unfortunate. But yeah. For fighting games, it works out really well because you need to be able to have, right, like a very precise kind of measure of what your character is doing and how. Ooh. You gonna Isen? You gonna Isen? You gonna Isen? You gonna Isen? Ooh. Careful. Very careful. They tried. I respect it, but they couldn't quite make it. Yeah, like, so yeah, like StarCraft can get away without like having rollback net play, right? League of Legends would probably benefit from it, honestly, but lol. Okay, you can't cancel that. I thought so. Neat concept I never thought about the issue. Yeah. Like I said, and yeah, and like I said, right, it depends on... It will absolutely depend, right, on, yeah, it absolutely depends for sure on, like, what the purposes of it is, what the purpose is for, right? So if you're not doing, like, a lot of, like, very pinpoint or, like, extremely precise sort of movements, you may not need it. There. Okay, that's good. I'm guessing modern fighting games designed with rollback in mind instead of after the fact. Good ones. Let me phrase that, not good ones. That's not the right way to put it. People who are thinking forward will. Yes. People who are not, don't. That's the simplest way to put it. Designers who are thinking about it will. Designers who aren't, don't. Alright, later, Stubby. So, the main reasons why it's practical to design with rollback in mind, though, right? So here's the main reason why. It's kind of, in its own way, practical to do that. It makes, to a certain degree, it makes programming replays easier because you've already kind of like set up a system wherein you are recording the essential things that are needed to reproduce a game state. So if you're setting up, if you're properly planning for rollback early and you do it the correct way, then yeah. You wind up doing a thing where you kind of already have there we go. Call that shit out. Gotcha. Yeah, so if you design with rollback in mind from ahead of time, doing things like creating recordings for like your training dummy become a lot easier because it's a lot easier to be able to like just reproduce specific inputs from specific points in time because you're already recording it. Yeah, it's a thing where it's like for rollback. If you are not familiar with networking in general, it's something that you can do by yourself, but you have to be familiar with networking in a very general sense before trying it. But there are libraries that exist if you know how to use like if you know how to use C, for example. I'm going to put it like this. It's one of those things where if you are not super experienced at networking, it's one of those things as in like networking, not in like the, how do I connect people sense, but in the terms of like programming like networked systems sort of thing. It is something that you'll want like an expert or at least somebody who's familiar enough with it to kind of like throw in a hand on, because otherwise, again, it's not impossible for you to do it yourself, but it becomes a little difficult. And it's a thing that you have to design. I'll put it like this, right? If you're doing a prototype, right, of a game that you think that you're going to want to put rollback into eventually, right? You want to keep it like really lightweight, because when it comes to rollback, you're going to have to figure out a way to be able to like properly, you're going to have to think of ways that you can properly store the information in order to like reproduce these things. And yeah, it can be challenging. Especially if you are not, like if you're like me and you have like no actual practical experience with making network games, it can be a little bit difficult to do as like the first thing. Working on API sucks for me, so yeah. Ah, I got hit by the command throw. Why did you rage explode like right now? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? So again, for people who just kind of came in and are like, what does it mean to rage explode? Right? So basically, Tam Tam exploded his rage meter so that he would do more damage on like hits, but now he doesn't have one for the entire rest of the match. Which is why I was like, why'd you do that? Because not that you can't win now, right? But now you are in a much more difficult situation as yeah. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it can be kind of like, it's a daunting thing, but if your game benefits from it, even if it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like maybe my first prototype doesn't have it, but at some point I'm going to have to like refactor the game to kind of account for these things. It becomes easier if you plan for it earlier. It's the simplest way for me to put it. Ah, damn it. Oh, that was bad for you, buddy. That was bad for you. Damn, look at that damage. Why didn't you go pick up your weapon? Why did you try to run in and fight me unarmed? Why did you try to run in and fight me unarmed? Why did you do that? What was the reason? One day I'd like to... I feel that. I can say for sure, for example, right? It's still in the early stages yet, but I know of a fighting game engine that is... Right now, they're working on, like, the actual... they're still working on the actual implementation of the rollback, but I know of a fighting game engine that is, like, actively... Shit. I know of a fighting game engine that's actively trying to work rollback into the base of it so that you don't have to write... Like, you don't have to, like, worry about writing the API or anything for it yourself. I know of one that is doing that, like, right now. The only drawback with it, such as it is that while I happen to be very familiar with how it works in at least most of the system-related stuff because of what it's based on, it can't do 3D games. So, like, if you want to do, like, 3D models, like how samsho does it, like, you can't do that with the engine that I'm thinking about. But if you like making... If you either make 2D fighting games or if you choose to, like, basically figure out how to... It's doable, right? Like, there is such a way to, like, set it up so that you could, like... I murdered that, man. That's unfortunate. Yeah. So, that makes sense, 2D... Yeah. So, it's one of those things where, like, you can, if you can develop the pipeline for it, basically the next best thing that you would do is that you'd have to render, you'd basically have to animate the thing in 3D, render the specific frames that you want as actual sprites, and then put it into the engine I'm thinking about. But if the rollback for that engine happens successfully, then basically speaking, you'll have a free engine that, if you know how to like operate like Golang, if you know how to operate like Golang and things like that, you'll basically have something that you can do a whole bunch of stuff with. But right now, like the rollback implementation within that engine is still very much in early days yet. But yeah, honestly speaking, right? Honestly speaking, I wasn't expecting the... So while we have had like a couple of like crashes and weird hiccupy things and a bunch of other like wild shit going on tonight, this is still literally more stable than it was when I was trying to just play against random people like last night. Straight up. Like last night, I was just trying to play people in the rollback beta, and this right now is a lot more stable. Maybe it's because I'm actually filtering my connections correctly, but it's much more stable than when I was trying to play it the other night. Alright, this might be the last set. We'll have to see how this goes. Assuming the game doesn't like crash or explode. It might. This one's taking an awful long time to load, so we'll have to see. Okay, we made it. So. So yeah, the main thing. So right, the thing I was. So yeah, again, for people that might have just come in and haven't seen me playing Samurai Showdown, I put my hand in the blender, and that's my own fault. Basically, right, this game is not... Damn, we almost had it. This game is not very combo heavy in the way that a lot of other fighting games are, right? Like Samurai Showdown is at its core not about combos, but about how well you can keep your cool under pressure. Because damage is really high, combos are very short. So it's one of those things where it's like, I don't like games where you have to like... I don't like games where you have lots of combos. Like, okay, play Samurai Showdown. But be warned, when you play Samurai Showdown, also that this game has... yeah, I think probably the politest way to put it is that this game... the damage being as high as it is means that you really can't afford to fuck around. Or you'll find out really fast, is the simplest way to put it. If you enjoy like games where you are on the edge of your seat, right? and you're like, I have no idea who it like. I have no idea like how will I deal with pressure and things like that. Samurai Showdown's not the game for you. However, comma. If you are okay with that, right? If you are, right, willing to sort of play a game where it's like my every motion is basically on a knife's edge, right? If you're willing to kind of like live with that, then this is the game for you. If you're like, I don't like combos and I can live with like getting my shit absolutely walloped if I make a mistake a couple of times, or where in really tense situations, one mistake can kind of like make or break the match. If you're okay with that, play samsho. And that sounds intimidating, and it kind of is. I'm not going to lie to you. It is. But for people who don't like really heavy, like really combo-based games, but really are willing to kind of trust that they have like discipline and to a certain degree, like the mental fortitude to handle high stress situations, Samurai Showdown is your game. You will have to flat out accept the fact that if you're playing Samurai Showdown, there's a very good chance that as you're learning and as you're trying to play it, that you'll make a mistake one time and get absolutely fucking exploded for it. And at first you might be like, that's kind of some bullshit. I don't like that. And that's fair, right? But if you don't like combo, yeah, it sounds fun to try to be on. Yeah, like when you get to play Samurai Showdown in a stable environment, like offline, or ideally once they have the rollback together, once you get to play this game in like a stable environment, you'll understand what I mean when I say that, like, this is a game that's not slow-paced. This is a game that is tense. I've been saying that a lot, and Stubby, before he left, was like, I'm going to make that into a drinking game every time, like, for the next time you stream this game. Which, fair. But the reason why I keep emphasizing it is because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that just because people are hesitant to press buttons in Samurai Showdown sometimes, where they'll just wait and not do anything, sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that this means Samurai Showdown is a slow game, right? I crashed. Okay, then let me not get too deep into that. I'm not going to restart it because if I restart it, there might be a chance that the whole thing will just fucking explode for no reason. So, yeah, the thing with Samurai Showdown, to kind of like touch on that before we leave, right? Just going to emphasize this thing. It's one of those things where, with Samurai Showdown, the thing that you kind of like, the tagline that they used for this version for this game specifically, for Samurai Showdown 7, was embrace death, right? That's the tagline that they kind of use, right? It's interesting because it's similar to, but different from the idea, right? Like with Dark Souls, right? With Dark Souls, for example, when they did, for example, prepare to die, right? And they were trying to sell it as this thing where it's like, oh yeah, this game is really hard. It's gonna like whip your ass and all this other stuff, right? But when Samurai Showdown says embrace death, it's not talking about like, oh, this game is going to be so hard to learn or it's going to be so difficult to this. It's just saying, understand that the margin by which you live or die in this game is very thin, and it is not because of difficulty, but because the nature of this game is tuned such that you are always playing with your life on the line, right? With Dark Souls, when it used the tagline "Prepare to Die," at least in the Western release, right? When it used the tagline "Prepare to Die" for the Western release, it's a thing where it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna get bullied and bullied real hard, and then I die, and it's just gonna suck, right? But with Samurai Showdown, the principle behind that is less that it's like, oh, you're gonna get bullied and it's gonna suck, and more, no, just understand that the nature of this game means that you walk on a knife's edge at any given time. That all it takes is a certain number of mistakes to be put in a position where you get put in a position where, like, okay, you screwed up. That's that. It's done, right? And Samurai Showdown is a little more gracious than that, where it's like, okay, if it's just early in a match and you happen to like mess up one time or two times, okay. But when it comes to that point where it's like, oh no, like we are for real in that, like, oh, actually living on a knife's edge kind of thing, nah, right? That's when we really have to worry about it. But I think that's fun for Samurai Showdown. If you don't like combos, right? If you're not really big on combos in your fighting games and things like that, and if you are willing to accept the risk, right, of potentially getting your shit rocked when you make a mistake, samsho is your game. And the key thing is that you embrace death and just understand that it's like, okay, there are going to be times where I tried to do the right thing and I choked and I got my shit rocked. And it's just what it is. But if that doesn't scare you, samsho's your game. Okay, I've been talking for a while. I have a really exhausting day tomorrow, and I gotta be along. So, thank y'all for coming by. I deeply appreciate it. Um, yeah, like it's definitely a very intense game. I can probably do like a 3 hour set. Well, I can probably do a 3 hour set in Samurai Showdown now. But when I was first playing it, about an hour and a half, maybe. Um, Game is very quick, which is also a thing to know, right? Like again, Samurai Showdown is not like a slow game; it's very quick, so it lends itself to like going through these things. Any road. Thanks for streaming and for explaining rollback. I always feel like kind of impossible when it comes to game stuff, so it's nice when you don't judge. You don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. Straight up. And when people, I know why you're saying that, right? That like people will shame you about it because people have shamed you about it. But they're a bunch of stinkers, and that's on them and not you. Oh, cool. Sin is here. Right. So, uh, things and stuff because we're heading out. So, Sin, we're gonna go hang out with Twisted. Because somehow, I guess just because of like internet shenanigans, they have been able to raid us, but we never raided over to them yet for BHM. So we're gonna go do that. So, quick things before we head out. The links that got put up earlier. Medium, I write long form game design articles over there sometimes. Stream bots, I put all the stream bots up here. Both parts of today's VOD, of today's stream, are going to go up at youtube.com/at SJH Does Games. So feel free to go check those out. Ko-Fi, if you want to support me without having to support Jeff Bezos. Because you think Amazon's stinky. I keep more of the Ko-Fi money anyway, so if you want to basically swap out a sub for Ko-Fi, do that instead. Throne is you can buy gifts for me, the streamer. Though I ask that you don't do that for February because we're doing charity fundraising. And then my card has all my other social media links like Instagram and TikTok and things like that. Donating. We are raising money for the Marsha P. Johnson Institute. I got really wrapped up in samsho stuff and didn't say that a lot. But we are raising money for the Marsha P. Johnson Institute because Black trans magic is a wonderful thing that deserves to be protected. So, pass along that link to people you want to donate to. Pass that link along to people that you know will donate to that. If you can donate yourself, please feel free to. We will be back on Sunday with more Validate Volume 1. We are probably going to finish up Malik's route and then probably start one of the other characters. Either Inaya or Isabel, depending on things in the stuff. So be here for that. Last but not least, the person we are rating, Pleasantly Twisted. They are, bar none, one of my favorite streamers on this godforsaken platform. She's really cool. Twisted basically does a whole bunch of different types of things. Try-hard games, JRPGs, challenge runs, and speed runs. Currently, they are practicing... thank you again for the double raid command, just to be sure. They are currently practicing a no-hit run for Unapologetically Black and Fast 2023 for Bloodborne. Beating basically most of the major bosses of the game and all that without getting hit once. When we go over to raid them, hit them with a good old SJH does raids. Let them know who sent you. Throw in your favorite emotes, all that other stuff. And yeah, I'll see you on Sunday for Validate Volume 1. Till then, stay safe. Wash your hands, wear a mask, don't go out if you don't have to. Be excellent to each other, but not to bigots, turfs, sexists, racists, JK Rowling stands, Jeff Bezos stands, Elon Musk stands, or just generally nasty people. Fuck them. They don't deserve nice. Fuck all that. Anyway, till I see y'all on Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye-bye.